Well, it's 9 o'clock. I think most folks are here, or can join us. So if you all are able, want to stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we'll try to keep an eye on Zoom to see if people come in, but sometimes it's hard to get questions. Does anybody? Oh, Marion didn't. Just one. Okay. Good. We have the first privilege of the floor. If anyone would like to speak. I take that as a no. Did everyone get an opportunity to look at the minutes from the March 4th meeting? Were there any additions or corrections?
It's fine to me.
Just a motion to accept them?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Let's get at it then.
Could I ask that the meeting minutes and the agenda be distributed to all members of the board in addition to the committee, please?
Sure. So there's a couple things out there. Sarah did a really nice job of highlighting the changes to the short-term rental law, and then we've got a nice set of recommendations from Linda Phillips from the county. So let's go ahead.
So I still have a bit of an issue with basing the occupancy on the uniform code. Just because of, I talked a little bit to Kristen last week about this too. So I think that it's confusing to the owners and the residents and the board, how many that could actually be. And I know you were showing me a document indicating some of them would allow what kind of occupancy with the change? It was like 39 or something.
Yeah, some of them could increase.
Yeah, some of them were really, really high, and I don't know if everybody realizes that that's what that would do. I would rather see us thinking about going back to where we had the occupancy before and allowing there to be some sort of a opportunity for people to file for a variance if they had an extremely large bedroom or something like that, to be able to allow more occupancy in that space, as opposed to just saying, okay, your maximum occupancy is 39. I mean, if you got 39, 40 people maximum occupancy, you could have 80 people there during a day, and we don't allow events, you know.
So Mike, where would that, how would that be regulated by parking spaces?
So that's kind of the deciding factor,
Yeah.
is that we still have the parking space limitations. Even right now, underneath the current local law with 2 per bedroom, there is the waiver from this planning board,
Yeah.
special use permit. So there is not a variance, but a process for relief from
Yeah.
that. So we can easily do that if that's what the board wants. Right now, pretty much in those cases, it would be parking space dependent on how many spaces they have.
But, you know,
Also,
like,
it would trigger if the law as it's written now goes into effect. There's a cutoff, so any property that has an occupancy limit over, what is it, 16 or
16
16?
goes there.
Go to the planning board for review, and those conversations would come up there too.
Yeah, but the last thing that I would like to do is encourage more parking to be, you know, I don't want people to add a parking lot to their short-term rental. And I also, you know, I think that it's difficult for both residents, short-term rental owners, and even the town staff to determine what exactly that occupancy is. And I think people spend a lot more time figuring that out than they would if it was a straight up number and, hey, if you got a problem with that, please come in and apply for more, you know what I mean? So I don't think it tells a story to our community. I don't think it tells a story to the board, and I don't think it tells a story to the staff when we have it based on the uniform code.
I don't remember exactly, but it was like 15 that were in excess that from the email you sent out.
It was 33,
33 out of
61 from the,
61.
so more than half were. What I would recommend is what we had before, which is 2 per bedroom with the opportunity to apply for a variance.
Did we go to 3 at one point?
That was parking. It's just
Oh,
parking
yeah,
of different- Yeah.
In the number 16, there was still some debate about 12 or 16.
There was, I think we put it in here. Did we put it in at 12 or 16?
And a 16.
Right now, it says 16 in the way the draft is written.
Yeah.
So those conversations would go to the planning board, and the planning board would have the power to limit it because it would technically still be. Well, it wouldn't be a special use
No.
anymore, but it would still go to the planning board.
And that's what I mean, trying to get consultation on, is what. Kind of speaking towards.
Yeah, what
what
authority does the planning
would,
board
yeah, what authority does the planning board have in this situation besides public notification? Because it's no longer a special use permit, it's basically like an operating permit. It's underneath the development office for issuance.
It would still be reviewed in a public meeting with, proper notice. So neighbors, anyone in the public could come in and.
Which I think is
give their
really
opinion.
important. for
Yeah, oh, yeah,
voters,
no,
you
the
know.
public, but that, and then based on that discussion and their own. Thoughts on the matter as far as the board's concerned, then they would make a decision as to what.
Would the neighbors know enough to come in?
Well, it's agenda items, they're usually notified.
Would they, like the 500-foot rule,
Mhm.
they'd be notified that way?
Through the planning board
Standard
process.
public
Yeah,
hearing.
anything on
They would be,
Anything on our agenda, they're.
I just want to make, they would fall under that, just want to clarify that.
I mean, that's one of the reasons we wanted it there is that they, you know, their neighbors know the property and the impacts on them better than any of us do, so. So.
Because this is kind of a different, Mike pointed out, responsibility or, for the planning board. I mean, it's not granting approval to construct something. I mean, it's a
Yeah,
kind of a shady area.
But it's more limited to what the original ordinance had. The original, anytime there was an appeal to the zoning officer's decision, it came to the planning board. So that could have been, ingress, egress, parking, hours of operation. This way, it's mostly tied to the 16, right?
that's really where I
16.
really been trying to get some consultation on, because the way that I read it, planning board is just a basically. Being referred to planning board for comment. So the actual ability to issue still lies within the development office. With the way that this is written. Now, we could put something in there that still requires a special use permit for anything that's greater than 16
Why did we take that away?
from the county's. Comments about zoning, correct?
Right, because it's a licensing issue, it's not a zoning question, it's. So they suggested that it be removed multiple times, so that's the way the draft is written.
Now, we could do just a blanket 2 per bedroom. Maximum occupancy, if you want to go over that, you go to the ZBA, just like any other town ordinance. And you go that route. So there's an option there.
think one
I
of the
mean, I
biggest
just-
Like the zone.
I think one of the biggest reasons that we came back to talk about short-term rentals again since
Was that,
last year was that.
Yeah.
That was one of the biggest complaints. was
Yeah.
The 2 people per bedroom limit, because it doesn't make sense with some of these larger bedrooms. to
But
say
if
you
they
can
have
only
the
2
option
people.
to variance, that's what I'm saying, like,
It's
I don't wanna
creating
create the law
automatic
on
variance
exceptions.
applications
And
Often, that's what I don't like.
And that's what I don't like either. Why put people through that if the state says this is the code and we follow that? I mean, why wouldn't we do that?
because
And I
this
think-
is letting
I
up
think
to
that
40 people being,
That's
short
not
term.
gonna be some.
No,
But
but
I think it's
it's
confusing, but
very confusing.
that's why we're here.
No, I know, but I mean, even if an investor, like if I wanted to buy a house as a 4-bedroom house on Canandaigua Lake and turn it into a rental, I should be able to look up something and be like, okay, that's gonna allow me to have, 8 overnight guests in there. Is it worth it for the price that I want to buy? I shouldn't have to spend an hour taking your time or Mike's time or Kristen's time to figure that out as a potential investor.
Disagree, and it's okay, give us a call.
I mean,
Not all the
It's-
code is gonna be,
I just think I think it's confusing and it's hard to explain also to constituents that it's, this, it's been hard for you to explain to us what it is, with the 50, 70, and adding it all up together. It's not an easy thing to explain. And I think it doesn't build trust when they're saying, okay, well, I'm gonna trust this guy to figure out exactly how many people I can put in this room. You know what I mean? Like
well, why would someone have a hard time trusting staff?
I don't think that they would. I'm just saying it's when it's not clear what it is to a novice, then it's difficult for them to.
We have code enforcement.
And Ryan, I kind of agree with you. But I think that my tech would be a little different. And I think I would address it through the parking. I think that that is our best way to control, and I have an issue right now with one car per 3 occupants. And I'll give you an example. If a person has a 3-bedroom home and wants to rent it to 3 different couples,
Mhm.
they only need 2 parking spots.
Yeah.
So where's the 3rd car go? So for a life safety issue for both the occupants as well as the emergency responders that might need to go to any particular house, where's that 3rd car going to be parked? Is it back to back? Does it block the driveway? And I think if a person wants to have a short-term rental, I believe they ought to have adequate parking to provide a safe situation for both the occupants and potential emergency responders. And I think it would be much easier to say 1 car per 2 people, or an alternative could be 1 car per bedroom or sleeping area. If we
We can't go
want
back to sleeping area.
well, let's say bedroom then, but we do have sleeping areas now. I think if we're basing it on the uniform code, it's a sleeping area. If we're gonna base it on Canandaigua code, it could be a bedroom. But I see that as being a much more important issue than whether we have 2 people in a bedroom or 3 people in a bedroom. My concern is safe egress and to the property. That's my concern.
My concern is that we're not creating hotels, right? Like I don't
Exactly.
wanna have 25, occupancy places that have to build a parking lot, because people might choose to do that.
And I do that by going to the planning board anyway.
I mean, potentially, yes,
But I mean, so.
To
that-
build
I
a
mean,
planning parking lot.
We have to look at.
but then it has to go through a much longer review process.
But it still would go through it, right, I mean, so,
If someone said, oh, I want to build a parking lot now to accommodate my
Which I don't
45
want them to
guests
do.
or whatever,
right,
they would have to. go to-
Which is not, I mean, but that's what I think. I don't want to encourage people paving more of the land next to Canandaigua Lake
I-
to acquire more, I
I don't
mean.
think that's gonna be the case because I don't think that there are that many homes in our area that are gonna go and allow occupancy of that magnitude. But again, I think rather than just say, we can only have 2 people in this bedroom or 3 people in this bedroom. I think if you say 1 car per bedroom, I think that addresses the safety issues.
so Mike, do we know, like, short-term rentals that are out there that have 4 bedrooms or whatever, do they have 4 parking spots traditionally, I mean?
Yes,
So there would be adequate then to base that on sleeping areas.
Yeah.
Because I agree with John, I think our job is to prevent tragedy from happening, so can we do that? I know we have short-term rental people here, how would that fit your needs, both 1 parking spot per bedroom?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's said. I certainly wouldn't want to see, a home in a residential area turn into a 40-person party.
Right.
At that point, I think it's time to call it an event if there's 40 people there. I think the parking is a big deal. I think obviously, if you have too many people there and not adequate parking spaces, then you could run into a situation where people are pulling off the street, parking on the side of the road, blocking the driveway for an emergency vehicle. I think that's a big deal too. And just to introduce myself, I'm Monica, this is Keith. We live on Little Cheshire Road. We have a property, a cabin on Goodall Road that we've had for almost 2 years, and we had a short-term rental for that last year. And we didn't have any concerns ourselves reading New York State code and understanding the code and applying the code, but I can understand how it can be confusing because it's not like there's a clear chart per se that I feel makes it black and white for people. I think having that clarity would be helpful for folks like us. We live 5 minutes from our property. We're local. We manage it ourselves. We do all the cleaning and everything to the property. For us, it's a joy to have the property, not only for our family, but we donate it to local charities for fundraising. We, it's much bigger than just, we live out of state and we want to rent it out and make money on it kind of
Right.
thing for us.
But I think certainly you guys can clarify what some of the ambiguities that are out there, and if people are not sure what it is, call our office and say, hey, where am I? I mean, is this 4 bedrooms? Is this 5 bedrooms? Is this a sleeping area? What is it? So, I mean, we count on you guys to do that. So in my mind, we want to lay down a foundation and then throw the ambiguity at you guys to rule on that.
Is there a determining factor of what is deemed a parking spot?
Yes, biggest thing is that it has to be a durable surface. Town code is very generic in that it can be gravel, it can be pavement, pavers, permeable, non-permeable. Biggest thing that we take as it cannot be a grass surface. That's generally what's accepted. Beyond that, average length of the car. Okay, so we're not looking at a pickup truck with a 6.5 foot bed. We're just looking at 4-door sedans. I forget what the measurement is that we use for that, but that's
9 by 18s.
So there's nothing really that states like accessibility to the property itself
there is underneath fire code, yes.
for that part, okay, in deemed of parking.
Yep.
Okay.
There was one other thing that I wanted to ask about. So we currently are on Airbnb, but we're also on New York Rental by Owner, which is a different platform that you can book on. With Airbnb, they actually don't allow any events. You can't have any events or any parties. You're not supposed to have any guests above and beyond who is sleeping there. So that's in our house rules. If it's a 4 adult booking, that there are to be no additional guests there. We don't want, this is just coming from us and from others I can speak that I've spoken with before. We don't want other guests there. I don't want the people that are coming in to host
Right.
a gathering of any kind. I don't want them to have people over for a fire. I don't want
There's
them
a
to,
liability on our end.
so the language that's in there, that's proposed to allow additional guests during the day would be something that, to me, would encourage the behaviors that we may not want with the properties. Because if it's just the folks that are coming in to, to visit the area, they may have family in town or a graduation party or whatever it may be, or they're here to visit the lake. The people that are doing it, that are following the rules of Airbnb, if they're on Airbnb, and I believe vacation rental by owner is the same way, the VRBO, we're not allowed to have extra guests there. If we do, then we could be in penalty with Airbnb. We could lose our listing on Airbnb, which would be awful, of course. So we make it very clear in our language that there are no extra guests. We have a camera to monitor. We know there's only one car pulling in the driveway. Of course, if we were to see that, this is supposed to be only be 2 people coming and all of a sudden there's 5 cars pulling in, well, then action would need to be taken. But just something to think about. Maybe we're too late to the game on that. I apologize. But I think having that language just encourages groups to come during the day and maybe make noise or be louder than maybe just the average family might be. Now, granted, families are gonna have parties too. They're gonna have parties, they're gonna have people over and they're gonna have picnics and stuff, but it's a little different when you are on vacation. I think everyone is a little bit rowdier, a little bit relaxed, maybe, hey, we're running this great place, just, bring them over, kind of a thing. Just something to think about. But also, I could maybe see the other side of it too. I don't know, if you're not on a booking platform and you're renting direct, well, then really it's your rules. You're making the rules up because you're not underneath Airbnb, you're setting the rules and you're booking directly through your own website, then that might be a different story. So I couldn't speak to those folks because we're not in that position.
I think we'd all love to have that, but I think
You
that.
kind of hashed
there's
it out
not
already.
a bar on
Okay,
that,
I was
right,
just
yeah.
curious. I just
Yeah.
wanted to
We
bring that
added
up.
that in because there were other short-term rental owners requesting that.
Okay,
so.
understand. I
Yeah.
could see both sides of it.
Yeah, along the lines with, the 2 people per bedroom
Mhm,
max.
right.
One of them, like the biggest complaints, the next biggest complaint was, well, I'm renting a house on the lake because I'm coming to visit my.
Yeah, I
parents, and
understand.
can't
I want to
have
have them over for dinner. I get it.
That was like the
100%.
common
Yeah.
complaint we got also, so
Yes.
we were trying to figure out a way, well, can we write the law in a way that they're not breaking that law?
Right.
Every time someone does something like that,
Understand.
but still preventing.
The
Right.
overnight,
Yeah.
staying late at
Yeah.
night, yeah, I like that, yeah, I was
Another-
just curious.
Another occupancy question that Chris and I were talking about before too was clarifying, are we talking about adult occupancy? So, you know, for example, I mean, if we had 2 per bedroom and somebody's wanting to have bunk beds with 4 kids in 1 large bedroom. I mean, that could also be clarified by saying, you know, that the per bedroom is for those over 16 or those over 12 or whatever we want to do as well, so, but.
Legally, we
Asking
can't.
people.
Yeah, how do we, I mean, I don't disagree with you, but how do we regulate
State does
that?
not.
By
define
using the
occupancy.
bedroom size.
You
in New York
can't,
State.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so state does not define occupancy.
Okay,
So occupancy is a 1 week old, occupancy is a 99-year-old. It does not dictate size, anything like that, age, nothing like that. So,
But that was one of the things why, you know, we kept going back to, well, New York State already says what's safe for a bedroom
Mhm.
size and how many people can be in it, whether they're 2 or 20 or 90.
Yeah.
That was one of the reasons we said that, because again, it's another one of the common complaints. I have a 200 square foot bedroom. Why can't I put a bunch of bunk beds in there? You know?
but they could if they filed the variance, and if we had it down to 12 and they filed the
Should
variance
they
and
have
asked to
to
do it.
file a variance to do that if it's
But how
like
many-
meets safety regulations?
See, that's where I'm at right there. If the structure already meets all the other criteria, why would we want to regulate against that?
Because I'd rather have there not be anywhere in the town of Canandaigua that's a short-term rental allowing 39 people to stay
How about a max
there,
cap
so.
townwide? Then you have to come up with a number. But
I mean, there is a certain point where they turn into hotels, you know, that's,
those are different regulations.
no, I know, but I'm saying there is a certain point where I mean, if there's 25 people in the house next door to me, it really doesn't feel like, you know, a short-term rental to me, but, yeah, I mean, you're right, if we did a max, we'd have a long conversation about if that's 18, 16, 25, 40, where it is, so, but.
I also like, we got 22 planning and zoning applications
Mhm.
on April 1st. I don't know how we're gonna deal with that. So I don't wanna encourage additional applications when they're likely going to be granted anyway.
Mhm.
I agree.
That's not a reason to regulate short-term rentals this way, but it's just something I think about all the time.
Well, I think why do we want to put people in the town through that if it's going to be approved anyway?
And we don't know what the zoning board would say,
Right.
of course, I can't predict, but. If it was something that meets state, I have a feeling they might. You know, put their foot down on it, I don't know,
But does anybody want a short-term rental that's 39 people in it? in
but
the
are we
town?
regulating everybody based on that one application? that
No,
comes on?
but I feel like this is doing the opposite, right? Like, I feel like this is regulating people based on the exceptions rather than the norm. As opposed to coming up with something that's based on the norm and then have people who have exceptions.
Well, we know
Like
there's,
Mr. Lupton's place, for example, not many people have 500 square foot bedrooms that they're trying to fill, you know, that's an unusual situation. So I just,
But parking spaces could regulate that as well.
but again, like I said before, I don't want to encourage someone to add more parking to their home on the lake. So that they can get more occupancy in their house, you
Yeah,
know?
but that's gonna be regulated by other zoning issue ordinances that we have. So do they have lot coverage?
Yeah,
You know, do they have the setbacks properly, et cetera, which is gonna help regulate that as well.
but what about like the property by Yvonne on Middle Cheshire that we've had so many issues with? That's, I think they're currently trying to do 20 in their advertisements or something like that. They have tons of room there to add an entire huge parking lot if they wanted to do. They wanted to do so. I mean, that could be a enormous hotel up there if they wanted to. And that's, they've already been a problematic location for us. I don't want that to be able to happen.
So what about 3 12-person vans pulling into park? You know, in the driveway, it has room for 3 12-person vans. You got 36 people. So,
well,
I mean,
under this new law, that wouldn't be.
Well, I'm just saying, you know, you're trying to write a rule to cover every possible situation,
Mhm.
and that isn't gonna happen.
It's
Right.
It takes me back a number of years to the chicken law. That's why it's buried at the very bottom of anything that this group will ever consider again, because it's an impossible situation. You can't cover everything this way. It's gotta be something that, to me, it's all about, you know, safety, health,
Right.
safety issues.
Yeah.
And protecting the neighbors that live near these places that have sent us complaints over time, many of them, about noise, about, you know, rude behavior and all that kind of stuff. Those, to me, those are the two issues.
Mhm.
I don't wanna see 100 people in a house either, you know, but, you know, if that 100 people were all sitting there peacefully, you know, studying the Bible, maybe,
Staring-
whatever.
Staring at the sun, they can't
That
see
is not
it.
going to be a
People around at fire acting obnoxiously. I mean, we can't, I don't think we can regulate that. I mean, it's just one of those things that we have to come down to what's gonna be the best for the town and all the people, short-term
Exactly.
rentals, and all of us that are not short-term rentals.
And you're never gonna cover every
Right.
situation,
Right.
so that's why you give them an out by going to planning board or ZBA, whichever we choose to do. For those situations where it's larger number, and, you know, we have to really emphasize the, you know, importance of respecting the neighborhood that you're staying in for a week or 2 or 3 weeks, something like that. That to me is that and the health safety thing, number of people in a bedroom, if there's room for 4 or 6, fine. If it meets New York State Fire and Building Code, I don't have a problem with that. And as far as being able to clarify that to people, we got a whole group of people here
Yeah.
we respect and know that they know what they're doing, and they're going to give the right answer to people when they call in, so let them call in. Now, the question I would have is now that we're hooked up with Granicus, what will the process be? Because we currently have maybe 140 or 150 short-term rentals that aren't permitted right now. We got 50 some that are, we think there's 200, so simple math like that, we got a whole bunch to go. Granicus is gonna ferret those people out. Are they gonna go to them and say, hey, you gotta get a permit to operate?
So Granicus, so we're not fully functional with them yet, but, what they have told that they will do for us is identify them through all their means that they have to identify the properties. They'll be able to tell us, after, we've already given them our permitting data, so they know which, houses have permits and which don't. So they will alert us, they've got, like, when we can go and look at like spreadsheet data, or we can look at property by property on a map or whatever. There's, for each short-term rental that they've identified, there's information on that page. It'll say whether or not they have a permit. It'll say whether they've already been alerted, because just like Property Guard did, Granicus will send letters on our behalf to, property owners who have short-term rentals, telling them, you know, you don't have a permit, you need to get one, and we have to kind of decide on some of the specifics by like, you know, how many do they get before they get a violation or things like that, but, we can click a button and the letter will get sent, you know, so I mean, it's pretty simple, for us to go through and look through that. So Granicus does the letters for us, they do all the identification, they do all the tracking. We also opted in for their hotline, the complaint hotline. So if a complaint comes in, is submitted through Granicus, I mean, we're gonna have to put, you know, those on our website for them, so for people to submit complaints through Granicus, but if they submit a complaint through there, we may never have to deal with it, depending on the level of complaint and how far it goes. That hotline is going to deal with it. Works, basically. I mean, some things are eventually gonna have to be dealt with here in the town, but
How can we inform people about being able to use Granicus for that? Is it like if on the website or something, like if you have a complaint, click here, or?
yeah, it will be.
I mean,
it's not
anything you
there
can take
yet.
off your backs would be nice, so.
Yeah, it'll just be like, just like collaborative.
Okay.
It's on everyone's page, it's, you know, it'll be in the newsletters when it officially starts, I guess, we can put it in there and
Okay.
stuff like that.
Some of it is gonna be, people are gonna call and we're
Yeah.
gonna say, here's how you need to do it.
Yeah,
People that have complaints about behavior, let's say, they will call this hotline number.
I can't
Or they
remember
could
if
call
there's a
here.
phone number or it's only online, I'd have
Either or, yeah, there's both options. They can call or they can submit an online complaint.
They call Granicus.
Yep, they call a 24/7 number for Granicus. It's manned by them. They answer it as if they were.
Granicus will notify you, there is this complaint at whatever address.
Yeah, we'll be able to track it.
The most important thing is they notify the property owner or manager first.
Mm.
Whereas right now, I get a complaint,
You,
I have to go through, track down the property owner, contact property owner, stuff like that, whereas they're gonna handle that. too. So if it reaches a threshold that requires me to go out. then
Is it
they'll
still
handle it.
come in as like an official complaint so that if a certain number of complaints are met, we are aware of it? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. it
uh,
tracks it.
Okay.
I'm not opting for a telephone tree at the town, but could we put one in like after hours so that if they call you guys, it goes directly to them?
There
You know,
is.
option one.
We can update that.
Yeah, we should update that because that will get people, I mean, people don't read the newsletter, people don't read whatever, so
Yeah.
if we.
I mean, that's gonna be true. anyway.
Right, but
People are still gonna call Mike if he's gonna say, please go do it.
but if they call Mike and it says option one for a complaint, then it goes right to them, then it'll take you a little bit out of
And
it.
that's, we have that now, at the very last selection.
I'm gonna go and
So-
see what happens, or you can see what
And then it
happens, right?
immediately goes to my phone, so,
Up that to the first selection on that, so.
yeah.
Granicus gets a complaint.
Yep.
They notify you by online.
Email, yeah.
Do you do anything or you let Granicus take care of it?
So if it's something,
Egregious.
let's put it, yeah, like we just had one gentleman was complaining, so there's 20 people pulling up to a house, it's only permitted for 10. Okay, that's enough for us to start a case against. I'm not gonna respond out 6, 7 o'clock at night for something like that. Now, if you call me and you say they're shooting off bottle rockets and they got campfires and there's music going off and they've got cars parked all over the grass. Well, I'm gonna call the sheriffs and I'm gonna go out with the sheriffs and it'll be dealt with that night. Stuff like that, so.
How often does that happen?
Which one?
The second, the scenario is going out with the sheriffs.
For short-term rentals, it's happened once. And it's nothing really, a lot of it can happen the next day.
Right,
Especially if, you know, great thing Granicus now is you can upload photos, videos. You can, I think, even FaceTime with them or something. They have video conference so that you can provide documentation and evidence, so I don't have to immediately go out and take photos of 20 cars, just send me a photo.
mhm.
Whereas now we don't have that, so that's a good thing.
In reality, really, the Granicus whole process won't be in effect. It'll be next year, not this year. I mean, it's gonna
Later
take
this
time
year.
to get everything.
Yeah.
They said that once they have the database built, the hotline could be an additional, like 3 months or so.
Yeah,
And getting the database built can be 3 months, so.
Yeah, so it's really, it'll start
The
this year,
complete
but
part is much later.
Be a Christmas present.
yeah.
We hope that the initial building of the database, obviously, happens sooner rather than later.
yeah. That's just going on gathering data and they can, sure they're adept at that, but I know I listened to a webinar a couple of weeks ago from a guy in Lake George, the code enforcement guy there. Well, he handled the whole department with all in the office, but they use Granicus. I was telling Sarah about it and couldn't be more pleased.
Yeah,
They're just really great at what they do.
From me when I was reaching out to all the places, because I asked Granicus, I said, give me all your New York people who used you, and we called, I don't know, 4 or 5 of them and heard back from maybe 3, and they were one of them. Love it.
And I can tell you from doing the last round of appearance tickets with Kristen, I mean, we had 32 issued. Granted, we've gotten that number down to all but 4 have put applications in. The other ones have been settled, we'll say. Having a software, a company that will go through and do that legwork of sending out letters and compiling basically case briefs for me.
Yeah.
Saves hours.
Tremendous amount of
Which is what we want to do.
Yeah,
Other than
That's,
32.
I mean, that's
where
where what I'm saying with the building code too, is I'd like to take things off of your back as much as possible, so you guys don't have to spend hours and hours on every single one of these, so, but.
I agree.
That's good. At least it's local then.
Was there a reason that we went back to a 1-year permit instead of a 3-year permit? Because the initial reason for the 3-year permit was so that it would be easier for you all, so that you wouldn't have to be doing this every year. So is that your preference to have the 1 year as opposed to the 3-year?
I think we thought that it would be kind of the renewal after 1 year would be a less significant review process.
Okay.
Because they kind of signing off saying that everything has remained the same, so.
I mean, I'm happy to have it, whatever is your preference. It's just, we were told before the preference was the 3.
There was a complaint from some people that they
Yeah.
didn't like the 3-year permit.
Okay.
They didn't like the $900 up front.
They don't like the $900, but also, people are selling their homes, they don't want the
Wow.
commitment with the non.
How do you get if they sell it, because it's not transferable, how do you get the money back?
Okay, so as long as that's your preference, I'm fine with it. Are we doing 300 per year then? Is that what everybody, because it doesn't, we don't say how much it costs in here, so. But it's
No,
in our
because
fee
that's
schedule,
what
so.
It's our fee
we're
schedule.
deciding.
It's in the fee
Yeah.
schedule.
Mhm.
So, obviously with the $900, it equates to about
Three,
$300 a year. If we're going down to 1 year, then the initial year is gonna take more time per person to review. And every year thereafter, the renewal will be less,
Less,
So you're suggesting a fee and then a renewal fee?
Yeah, that might make sense. I
Yeah.
mean, we've had it suggested to us that the first year be 500 and every year thereafter be 300. I don't know. I know I've said this before, what the companies that monitor this, we've had 2 companies tell us this, that generally what they say is typically a good 1-year permit cost is the average cost of the 1-night rental in the town. Obviously, for some people, that's gonna be $100 and for some
So
other
it's
people, that might be
1,000,
$800,
yeah.
but our average, what they told us, I don't know, 6 months ago now, maybe, was around $350. So our $900 permit was low, according to them, $300 a year. It's a little low.
Also,
so what do you
Close
guys?
enough. I mean, I
somebody
know
could
that
always
probably
say first
wouldn't
night is free.
How
And I mean that in the third, but
many hours are you all putting, I mean, is it covering your work to do a $300 or a $500 fee? Like,
Kind of get averages out, but it covers that. Some are very easy and some.
Yeah.
So would you suggest 500 as an initial and then 300 as a renewal?
The town attorney suggested that to us to consider. I mean, we just updated the fee schedule for a lot of our other permits, based on. It was taking us a lot longer to review some of these applications and we weren't charging appropriately. I don't know.
maybe we should leave it alone for this year and address it when we look at fees next
Yeah.
January.
So what is it this year? It's not.
Right now, the fee schedule is that a short-term rental permit is $900.
Yeah.
so we have to
Guys, if
change
you
it.
don't change it, then and
It'll be
you
1
adopt
year
this,
for
a 1-year
900.
permit is still going to be $900.
Yeah, I would let that. We're gonna.
But- I mean, ultimately, it's up to.
Because we love doing the fee schedule.
Well, the 900 really came about because we wanted it to be less than 1,000, so I mean, it's gonna be per year.
It was based on kind of, what is it per year? Is it around that 300 or so? Does that make sense?
I mean, and that goes back to my question of it is, would 300 and or 500 cover the costs for the majority of them for your review?
Yeah,
Okay, that's,
I do kind of like the idea that the initial permit.
I do
fee,
too.
Or that the renewal fee, I'm sorry,
Yes,
is a little
less.
lower.
I do too.
Because it kind of. It says, oh, okay, you're coming back. Oh, is everything the same? Yes. Okay, fine. That's it. That's the review, but.
Whereas the initial might require a site visit, it
It
might
could.
require stuff like that, where it's taking. 4 hours
Well,
instead
and
of 2.
Well, you're gonna have to review plans for the bedrooms. I mean, there's much more involved in that initial,
Yeah.
I would imagine.
And you wouldn't be charging people for, like I was saying before, asking a question. If they were planning to invest, you wouldn't be charging for that. That's taking your time as well, so.
There was a question asked by the county about when you're reviewing the floor plan. The windows and doors be, I can't remember.
Oh, yeah, I saw
Yeah,
that.
I didn't print
Doors
that.
and egress.
That's.
Should,
I
yeah, should it
imagine
be
that's
required to
something
show
what
doors
they're-
and egress?
It
I would
is.
like to have them on there. There's times I have to follow up and
Yeah.
ask questions about them.
I think that's.
Well, because you have to have the egress for the bedrooms.
To be a bedroom, yeah.
Yes, yeah, it's difficult. But we can do it, it just puts more. That's why we want 2 bedrooms, right?
Yeah.
So if we already have it in, the assessor's office already has it in ours as a bedroom. Now we're no longer counting sleeping areas because we can't permit sleeping areas. There's no physical way for us to go through and check egress and all that. If ARPS already has it, or RPS already has it listed as a bedroom, well, that's because
Then it's
my
been
office has
confirmed
already
already,
gone
yeah.
through that process, so it's easier for us to
Mhm.
check all the egress.
What about, you had said sometimes people are saying, okay, fine, then I'll just convert my living room into a bedroom and switch one of the small bedrooms into a living room. What's happening in those instances? So, I mean, how are we handling that?
If it meets the criteria for a bedroom, then
Yeah.
it can be permitted.
So that's when you're checking egress, you're making sure they have light, ventilation. All, plus our town requirements for a bedroom, which is another 4 criteria, so. That's really where we go with that section. So. If it matches with the assessor's guide, it's super easy. If it doesn't match with the assessor's office, that's when the alarm bells kind of start.
Yeah.
But a
Going
lot of
up,
people will have
so.
to get done that would meet all the criteria.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's other requirements too, like if the only way out of a bedroom is to go through another bedroom, then it can't be a bedroom. You know, so there's other safety things that are limiting in some of those.
I think one of the questions that still rattles around in my mind is that upsetting the neighborhood. People, most people don't do that. I mean, you know, again, you're trying to write something that's gonna cover all these situations, but there's one in particular, I remember on Westlake Road, County Road 16, where the lady complained that, you know, the house was owned by somebody out of state. And, you know, I said, every summer I have to put up with this noise. Now, some of these people are older, and I can tell you, the older people sometimes are, I don't like it, but I'm not gonna make any waves, you know, so, but people shouldn't have to live like that. So, to me, what's important is that people, the neighbors have a number that they can call, that they can make, they can call here, I know, but you come to a town board meeting, see how many people are there other than your back, you know, I mean, there's hardly anybody. The interest in government and what happens in this building is probably at an all-time low. I don't think it can go any lower, but there are not many people that really understand the mechanisms
Yeah,
and what can come into play, you know, if they make a complaint, you know.
or they don't want to go to that level.
Yeah,
like,
and
feel
I,
like you're
you know,
telling.
so to me, it's important that at least neighbors have some, I don't know how you do this, and you know, it's above my pay grade at figuring it out, but I'd like to see that people have some convenient way to lodge that complaint if there's a complaint. I
It
think,
sounds like Granicus is gonna provide a phone
Well-
number and email, so.
well, but to the neighbors,
Well, I think it's incumbent on us to try to get that word out there.
Well,
If there's a continued complaint about that, I mean, that woman, man or woman would have that. Thinking of the woman, because it was a woman that was complaining, would have that number. You know what I mean? If it's a habitual problem, then contact won't be a problem.
but how does she get that number? How does that neighbor
Well,
get that
that's a
number?
great question. I mean, that is the issue. I mean, do we put it on our website? Do we have a spot for complaints or?
Well,
I
see,
don't
you're
know.
the chairman, you're supposed to know the answer to my question, you know?
I don't want any part of that.
That it might be a town issue, maybe they call town hall.
Right.
Well, that's,
Give them the information.
to me, that's who should be called. Granicus, yeah, great, and all that, but here, we're the people, I mean, we're the ones that are crafting this, we're the people that have that responsibility to our residents to provide them, like, you know, service, more, and all that. I don't know, maybe it won't be a problem, maybe I'm making too much.
No, I'm sure it'll be a problem, but it's just a question of how do we overcome
Yeah.
that and without burdening these guys all the time. So
Right.
somewhere there's gotta be that happy medium.
At the risk of making a long discussion longer. I know I've shared this with a couple of you, you know. There are some communities in the Bigger Lakes and in New York that have much stricter short-term rental laws than the town.
Yeah.
There are some that you cannot list your home as a short-term rental unless it's your home that you live in.
You live in this.
And they restrict, so you wouldn't be able to purchase a home for the sole purpose of using it as a short-term rental, like they wouldn't allow that. You could not do that in these towns. You know, other things they do is they limit the number of days per year it can be listed as another way of restricting that. Then you would, you know, when it's owner occupied, then you don't have that issue of them being out of state. Now, we are trying to figure out a way to make sure there's somebody local who can be accessed. But I mean, there are other things the board could consider if there's still that fear that.
Well, it's gonna be a developing process, I'm sure.
Yes, I mean, that's what it is.
Can't handle it all here today.
Right.
There's some towns that won't allow you to, have it owned by a LLC, you know, it has to be owned by a person.
There's, yeah, there's one.
There's some
where-
that deter people from that, where their annual fees for an LLC owned short-term renter are like $2,500 a year. But owned by a person is much lower. So like, there's a lot of different methods towns have used to restrict and protect and.
I mean, to me, there's a problem with that because people form an LLC to protect themselves from whatever. So I mean, do we increase their burden because of that? I'm not sure of that. So I hear what you're saying, but I'm not sure of that.
I'm not suggesting it.
Right?
I'm just letting you know, there's
Something.
there's a lot of different ways that municipalities restrict and regulate short-term rentals. I feel like because the town is relatively recent in doing this, you know, some of these other places may have been doing it longer. And granted, short-term rentals have been here for decades, you know, but.
Maybe the fee should be based on number of complaints received from, no, one of the reasons we're doing this for health safety
It's bad
reasons.
enough, they're
but
gonna
also
have a
complaints.
violation that will end up with fees.
Charge for complaint.
I cannot guarantee that there are fines that will be levied.
There were a couple other things I noticed in here that, is a copy of the code going to be, I don't know that we require this to be posted or available at the short-term rental. It was suggested by somebody that's been looking at this, of the town code, whatever we ultimately, whatever
And
that
that
is.
can be added as a requirement.
Huh?
That could be added as a requirement.
Well, that was
under, like, the
suggested by-
signage.
Somebody that contacted me that they have it there so that people know, you know, you're in several, one of the, email we got from the county said that we were kind of redundant because we talked about events in several places. That's fine with me because that's the point we're trying to drive home, so I'd leave that alone, but having this available for, you know, people there so that they have a clear view and understanding. Sure, they might sign a contract, you know, to be there for a week or two, but a lot of people don't read everything they sign. And,
Most of it's on the guest book, you put it in the guest book.
Instead of
Yeah.
having signage on a wall,
Well, yeah,
they have like an
Yeah.
owner's, like a short-term rental manual in there that had egress, you know, this is the town
Well,
code.
Where do you,
We've already
where you
asked,
go to church?
Yeah, where you go to church,
I don't think we're
Tom
gonna
was already-
require how.
how they post
Oh,
it.
no.
but we're already posting
Yes.
maximum occupancy, statement that no events are permitted. A notice that occupants are not permitted to disturb neighbors, blah, 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 address, evacuation procedures, and contact numbers for emergency services, so.
But one of the issues is I interpret posting as I got someplace on the wall, or I'm sticking this up, which I would like to not have.
So that's what we have.
Yeah.
So currently it's written that the property must yes, never gonna try and say that word again.
Conspicuously,
Post, thank you. Post the following signage in a protected mounting and a common entry. If no common entry exists, the posting shall be made at the entrance of each dwelling.
But that's safety stuff.
Yeah, that's what the,
and events.
yeah, that's what was.
Yeah,
read off.
I'm talking about the whole rule, the whole,
Yeah,
whatever we
we have
want.
If we
that.
say that it's
Available, not posted.
Yeah.
You could also say best practice or something, but by the way, that does still say no events twice. 7 and.
7 and 2 are
Two.
duplication.
Not that I, think that's necessarily a bad thing, but K,
One of the other things I noticed too is that the
I still,
secret document isn't properly filled out.
thank you.
I don't know who actually filled it out and signed it, but it's not complete.
Q and
For this
C.
level
The secret.
Yeah.
So
It says section C has to be filled out if you answered yes to.
But then under section C, none of the questions. So I looked
Oh,
at
they
that
do.
like 3 or 4 times.
There's. I think there's a couple that do apply.
But the first question says, is it a plan? If, go to whatever. So there's really only one question.
Yeah. When you municipally adopted comprehensive plan, land use plans include the site where proposed action will be located, yeah. Our
I have to
comprehensive,
look at it in
the
my
whole,
hand, but I have looked.
I'll take a
the
look at
secret
it.
multiple times, and I don't see any other way to fill it out.
F and G are easily, because they're just pre-signed at the end.
Right,
But C look like there's a question that you would.
but it only tells you the answer to the first. You only go past the first question if it's not a plan for a law. Now, I'm interpreting it incorrectly, but that's how I read it. I can ask MLB, since they do this, and things like that, how they.
Tell them it's pro bono ads too.
Seems to me we still have 3 issues outstanding that we haven't come to consensus on or conclusion on. Number of parking spaces, number of occupants, and maximum occupancy.
Well, this says 16 for maximum. Everybody comfortable with that?
It's not,
It's-
it's
it's not
16 that will trigger it going to the planning board. It's
Right.
not a max, it's not a cap.
We had 12
Okay.
before. What motivated, what initiated the change from 12 to 16?
I think our discussion before, we talked about
that.
throwing stuff at the
Put that
planning
in
board and at the. at
Yeah, we
these
put
guys.
16.
Yeah.
I mean, to my point earlier, the lower the number, the more applications are gonna end up at the planning board when we have.
Right. So maybe that's somewhere in the middle, you know what I mean, between those.
Is 16 the number then?
Well, someone had suggested 18, and someone had suggested 16, so which I think that's why Nadler said
12.
16 instead. I don't know, it's not our choice. It's up to
Well,
you.
we got it. We should answer that today because we do have a public hearing on this at
Right.
our next town board meeting.
I mean,
What are you at?
See how it works.
What
Put
are you
16
at?
in, see how it works.
Are we at 16? So everybody.
we are at
So it is.
16 and
I know, but I mean, is that where the 4 of us wanted to be? That are in the room?
I'm good with 16. I
I
don't,
mean, I can do 16, I prefer 12, but.
I prefer 12 as well.
Oh.
Again, I think it's, for me, it's a concern about the neighbors.
Yeah.
And I think 16 is a lot of people to rent to, and that's my concern is the neighbors.
It's a hell of a lot of people.
It's a lot of people, and
And
then,
single family home. We're not talking about a resort.
That's right.
This is a single family home in a single family neighborhood.
yes,
There
Okay.
shouldn't be that many people. I
And
don't
then
care
the-
whether you call it an event or what the hell you call it.
then to complicate it, we allow double the number of,
Absolutely.
so
So
I
that's
think
32 or 24. So
Right.
that's a big.
That's a
difference.
big
32
difference.
and 24.
Yeah. You
so,
don't
so
wanna-
if we,
you don't
if
wanna be
we,
the
if we
neighbor.
go to 12, all it's gonna do is go to the planning board.
That's
and
right.
How many of these will be denied at the planning board?
Hang on.
No.
Kristen, how many do you had that list of how many there are and what their occupants would be, right? Do you still have that? Yeah, but so does that have the occupancy like of how many, the ones that we currently have, do we know what their occupancies are?
What they would go up to.
Yeah.
That's just based on bedroom size.
Yeah.
When you do a query on Vibro or Airbnb, what's the maximum they? Yeah, they have.
I'm not sure.
Oh,
You want me to
okay.
look? See if I can tell you.
Cause they usually ask how many.
Right.
Yeah, that's what they start.
And I'm not seeing a lot, when I'm looking at those websites, I'm not seeing
Maybe
a lot
12.
of people advertising for, I think
Over.
20, I think is the max. for
Yeah,
that one on
that's the
Middle Cheshire
one,
Road.
yeah.
I don't really see anybody else advertising for more than
Or
that.
maybe
So
keep hitting the
it's
plus sign.
16. It's for adults.
16.
No, I just did a search as
Mhm.
a guest and it only allowed me to go to 16 for
Sure.
ages. They consider an adult 13 and above,
And we're not drawing that line.
right?
No,
But
so-
just, yeah.
So, that's 16 kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
16 is max
16
children too.
could include,
What you can search for,
yes. if
Yeah,
I'm
so you
allowed to
can't search for over 16
On
on
Airbnb,
Airbnb.
Adult
Actually,
and
16
person,
total.
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 Children, adult, doesn't matter.
If I do 16 adults, 13 and above, I can't add any children
can-
under
yeah.
13. So if I made it 15 adults, I could add one
One
child.
child.
So 16 is the
units.
maximum on Airbnb.
So that would keep us in line with at least one of the platforms that's out there that's very popular.
My vacation home.
Well, it doesn't limit us to 16 or 12. Again, what it does is defers it to the planning board so that the planning board can decide whether it's a neighborly situation or not,
Exactly.
and whether it is neighbor friendly or not. And I think, as what Terry said earlier, our whole premise when this discussion goes back 10 months.
5 years.
And we've had many discussions over this, and the whole premise of it was to make it neighbor friendly for everyone.
Mhm.
And I think 12 does that, because if you double it with guests and go to 32, that's a lot in one single family home. And I think it's contentious for the neighbors potentially.
But that is also limited by parking. 32 is limited.
That's
by
next
parking.
conversation. I think we ought to stay one at a time and stay with the occupancy and decide, is it 12 or 16? I prefer 12.
The other reason that we came up with 12 initially is we were looking at, when we were on the 2 per bedroom, we were like, okay, how many houses in the town of Canandaigua even have more than 6 bedrooms? Not very many, and so that was.
Right.
That was where we first came up with it. It was like a normal short-term rental is gonna be like 4-bedroom house, type of thing, maybe a 5-bedroom house, and that's gonna be 10 people, or that's gonna be 8 people, so. That's sort of where that was thinking of that, so unless you're putting like, 6 people in a bedroom, then, you're not gonna have many houses that are gonna be over that 12 number, so.
So what is the committee recommending to put down on this law, 16 or 12?
I would prefer 12, sounds like John would prefer 12, I don't know where Terry is.
Well,
Okay, so if we've got 3 of us, then we should do 12, and then talk about it in the town board and see if we're still all at 12.
Well, it'll come to the town board the way it's written,
The way it's written, okay.
the way 16.
because that's how the public hearing was set, was.
For that, yeah.
So you would.
So this
have
discussion
to-
can continue
Happen
in the
in town.
public hearing.
Right.
But you guys would like to see 16.
I don't know, I just keep getting stuck.
Well,
on
it
how
sounds
many
like
applications we
Zebra,
keep-
Airbnb, Casa, they all have a limit of 16. We're not gonna see anything 16 though.
Yeah.
Planning board, so
Well,
maybe
Unlikely,
unlikely,
Yeah.
because so you can't rent.
They don't have a limit of 16.
Just means they can't
You
search.
can't search for more than 16.
Yeah.
And a lot of these private ones,
Private ones are not on there, so some,
But in your contract, you usually say on the number of people.
Through Airbnb, not private.
Right,
Yeah.
if they're
No,
renting
private,
it out
private,
themselves,
private.
like they have a website or.
which. a
there's one
lot-
already at 20 in town that we know. of, so-
but that's not on Airbnb.
they
Because
got-
you can't be, right? I mean,
Picked off.
right.
What about 12 adults and maximum 16 with kids?
He said that we can't do anything. with
Can't do
adults.
that.
It's really hard for us to police that.
Well-
really.
Well, it sounds like it's going to the town board at 16.
Okay.
Well,
I
want to address that comment. There's nothing saying we can't change it, right?
No.
We could change it before the town board meeting. We can send out a new notice to the community that this is the new short-term rental. Which is being considered
At 12, yeah.
at 12.
And keep in mind, does anybody here
And then let them,
who lives in a residential neighborhood have 12 people living next door to them?
no,
Absolutely none.
no,
And we're accommodating exceptions for
Right.
people that are running businesses and generating income. And we're worried about it's $300 or $500.
Mhm, yeah.
And we've been screwing around with this for way too long. Let's get it done, and if there are exceptions, we'll accommodate them.
and let's
Make it
modify.
12.
We got a mechanism.
That's
Get
right.
3 people out of 5 people in this committee, they're saying 12.
Well, yeah.
That's
I've been expensive. I'll
majority.
go to 12. I'll go to 12.
And it's
Or-
still a heck of a lot of
Right.
You
neighbors
convinced me.
that you didn't have before.
Exactly.
They give you something to do, Chuck, when the others come in.
Yeah.
All right, so now let's move to
The
parking
reason they ask for
spots.
a
It's gonna have a lot of.
I gotta go.
Excuse me.
But it's 16 in the draft.
Oh, sorry, John.
So I think if you want to change the 12, it'd be like during the hearing, you could say the ordinance committee.
We can modify it before the hearing.
We have to send out a public notice.
Send out a public notice.
See you, Tom.
Bye, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Parking spots, do we want to go 1 parking spot per bedroom? That seems like an easy way to regulate that.
Can I ask for Kim Burkhart as the ECB committee person for your thought on parking spots? Because my biggest concern about the whole parking spot issue is, like I said, encouraging more impervious surfaces. So I don't know if you have a thought on it at all.
Well, there are controls, especially if you're talking to RLD on, building coverage.
Lot coverage.
Yeah, lot coverage, sorry, and, as long as your zoning board is looking at those and trying to keep the variances for that down, I wouldn't have an issue, but I know the zoning board is quite permissive. So that would be my concern. And then the planning board, but obviously.
If it's over a certain threshold.
Yeah.
The vaccination.
My only concern with the bedrooms and limiting it at one per bedroom is that gets rid of the parking spaces limiting the occupancy. By doing it, it's one parking space per 3 for whichever number the committee decides and the board decides. That's where we figure out how many parking spaces are needed. If you just say one per bedroom, that bedroom could have 10 people in it.
Well, it could be a family of 4,
It could be, yep.
right? But now the way it's written, we have one parking spot for 3 occupants. So in a 3-bedroom unit, as an example.
Yeah.
You only need 2 parking spots. So where's the third car go?
Say that again.
Bedroom is not
Do
limited.
the math. If you have a 3-bedroom unit.
Yep.
You only need 2 parking spots.
What if it's one family with one car renting all 3 bedrooms?
That's it.
So-
That's right, but that's a minimum situation. Now let's talk about the maximum situation where generally you have 3 couples renting that 3-bedroom apart or 3-bedroom home. They only need 2 cars. What are you gonna do with the third car?
Well, we can drop it down to 2, one parking space for every 2 occupants.
That's what it was, but I'm saying, rather than occupants, you could do it per bedroom. So you have 3 bedrooms.
Okay.
Could be 3 couples. Now you have parking spots to accommodate those 3 couples. If you do one car per 3 people, they only need 2 parking spots. Right? And my question then is, if you have 3 couples, where are you putting a third car?
Well, so my suggestion was based off the add-on your comment earlier about these bedrooms that are 400, 500, 600 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
For that bedroom, that's, I'm not even gonna do the math right now, but say. it can
6
fit
people in
6
that
people.
bedroom. Yeah.
Now that's only 1 car.
One car, right?
For that whole bedroom is required.
Right.
Is required. By having this 3, say for 6 people in a bedroom, 3 are required. I see where you're coming from as far as the minimums.
Yep.
I'm looking at the maximum based off of the committee's statements earlier. Where you don't want to see these to be motels.
5.
So by having 20 people in a bedroom, and you're saying you only need 1 parking space. You only need 1. But by saying it by
That's not limiting it
occupants.
as much, yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
but-
it's limiting it more
But
by,
the counter argument to that is, there are very few that are gonna have that situation. You can't legislate for every situation. And if you have that many people, it's gonna go to the planning board. And the planning board is gonna go and determine whether it's a neighbor-friendly situation or not. However, if you got a 3-bedroom unit, which is more often the case than not, and you're gonna have 3 people, 3 couples renting it, which is probably the majority of the time, what are you gonna do with the third car spot?
So.
I think your argument could be fixed with, we could just change it, if that's what you want, we could change it to 1 parking space per 2 occupants as opposed to 1 parking space for 3 occupants.
Or,
Which is a more likely thing to happen, obviously, because couples go places, you know.
But if you got a family of 4, and they're renting 1 unit, 1 bedroom, they're gonna be traveling together.
Mhm, yeah.
So, I mean, I think 1 per bedroom works better, but I'm okay with 1 per 2 occupants as well.
why not 1 per 3?
It doesn't work.
He's
What are you
just
gonna
like,
do?
that doesn't work
If
in
you get a
typical situation.
3-bedroom unit, which is the
No, no,
majority of the
one
homes,
car for 3 occupants.
that's what I heard that.
Factored
I
out, right?
understand, but now if you got a 3-bedroom home
Mhm,
and you have 3 couples renting it,
mhm.
you've only dictated per the ordinance that they have to have 2 parking spots. So where does the third car go?
They're probably gonna build 3 parking spaces. is what they're
Probably, but that's a
gonna do.
probably, but
yeah.
they don't have to per the ordinance the way it's
Yeah.
currently written. So I'm asking the question, where does the third car go?
Well, you can't park there. That's the end of the story. You can't park there. I mean, I don't know how you want, well, how else do you put that? If it says two
They're right
cars,
together.
it's two cars.
So then
Right.
they have to write, what if they're strangers?
I think,
But we
I think.
can't legislate for
No, no,
that, yeah.
I think the
They shouldn't be
solution to
running
John's
together then.
question is to make it one parking space per 2 occupants, which will further limit the amount of people staying over in the place. So I mean, I'm happy with 1 per 2.
Or one per bedroom?
We upped it
That's-
to 1 per 3 last time.
Which is less restrictive than 1 per 2.
Yes, exactly.
Do you have any feeling at all for the size of driveways versus these runs? If you got a 50-foot long driveway, you can put
Exactly.
6, 8 cars in. I mean, it's.
As long as they have fire truck coming in and out,
Well-
as long as it's wide.
No. The fire truck does not have to get down every driveway. That's just a common misconception.
Yeah.
The only reason why I was suggesting to going for occupants was because the board, 5 minutes into the meeting, suggested limiting the occupancy. By not doing the cars off the bedrooms, you're limiting the occupancy. Do it off the bedrooms. I can tell you, Kristen, I've been in a lot of these. It's not the case that these bedrooms can only fit 2 people. These bedrooms can fit 10, 12.
How big are their driveways?
Some of them, the size of this room.
Yeah.
Others, 1,200 feet long with 4 pull-offs and a parking area down below.
How many of them, I mean, are there many of them that are driveway the size of this room?
Terry,
I mean,
look
is
at
that a-
my old house.
So what I can
Okay,
tell you
but
is, I mean, the best example is everyone knows the one that was built on Westlake Boulevard that was built to be an Airbnb. Has a maximum occupancy of 36. Based off of our
Yeah.
calculations. That one has a parking lot, a driveway, I should say. That's the size of this room plus a 4-car garage.
So that'll
Yeah,
limit
you
their
fit about
36. I mean, that's really
So
what we
now-
wanna do.
But so if you do, 3 per,
Right.
yes, I mean, that's where you gotta go and decide, do you wanna limit occupancy by using parking spaces? Or do you just wanna say, make it easy?
So they
for
have,
staff?
how many parking spaces they have? They have 9 parking spaces?
I don't know, they haven't come for a permit yet.
Okay, but
so-
4-bedroom garage and,
Yeah, 4-bay garage and probably about this size.
okay, so
Stuff
let's
that's
say they have
ours.
8 parking spaces. So if we're doing 2 people per parking space, that's gonna allow them 16 people to stay there. If we're doing 3 people per parking space, that's gonna allow them 24 people to stay there. And you're saying that their measurements would be 36 for their
Our
occupancy.
parking requirement is a minimum. It doesn't state a maximum number of parking spots.
Like you.
Yeah.
Part of your statement was if you wanna make it easier on staff, then you catch the.
If you wanna make it easier on staff, then you just say you're not gonna require parking as a criteria.
We definitely want.
Well, like, that's the two.
Yes.
If it's the board's decision, do you wanna use parking to limit occupancy? Or do you just wanna say you just have to have parking?
I would like,
That's-
It goes
So-
back to
so-
my original comment from the beginning where I would rather simply limit it based on bedrooms, but and with a variance for the unusual bedrooms, but
Yeah.
that's.
No parking on site. And paved gravel.
But durable surface.
Parking on site, I mean, these two things are fighting each other, the number of people, the number of vehicles, I mean, I don't know that you can, how do you rationalize that completely? That's,
well, if they have more sleeping capability than they have people to park there, I think my opinion is we
Well,
wanna
that's
limit it
good.
that way for sure.
It just seems an odd way to create your minimum. I mean, if I've got a family with 4 kids and I'm in 1 car, do you know what I mean? Like, I should be able to enjoy the same amount of space based on the size of the building, not based on how many parking spaces are in the driveway. I don't know. It seems odd to me, but I don't think I have anyone agreeing with me on that. So
Is this all just a minimum? There is no maximum?
maximum, no, there's not a maximum.
There is no.
There is no maximum.
The
right?
maximum is
Like-
decided by zoning, lot coverage, permeable surfaces. That's all done when the building or the lot is created, I
Yeah,
should
but-
say.
Okay, so let's say our problematic one on Melchester Road, they could probably build a parking lot up there. They have an incredibly long driveway,
Okay.
incredibly large house, and lots of space up there. They could build a parking lot that parks 25 cars, I mean.
My arguments to that would be, what's stopping me if I own that house, so I don't have this area? That's where, if that's a concern, that's what I would focus on.
What's stopping you what?
What's stopping me from doing that anyways, if I don't have an Airbnb?
Yeah, you don't have to have a short-term rental
To have a big
build
parking lot.
Giant.
Oh, no, I
asphalt
know.
Yeah.
Parking lot in front of your house.
So if that's
Needs
a-
zoning, you can do it.
Yeah,
I know, but my point is if this parking thing is meant to limit the number of people there, I mean, that's already been proven as a problematic location. It doesn't do anything for that, you know, I
We shouldn't
mean,
be writing this law based on that house.
no, I shouldn't, but I'm saying that's one identified problem we have, and it's just.
But I don't think we can
Yeah.
attack that specific problem with parking because they have so much property.
I
you
think
know what
the
I mean?
biggest issue is the whole reason why parking got put in. And I'm trying to, I think it's in the law right now, we're trying to keep all these straight, is because a lot of people are parking on County Road 16.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The street.
County Road 16 is horrible to go down.
Yep,
Right.
it's full of short-term rentals.
So by limiting the part or making sure they have adequate parking
Mhm.
on their property to sufficiently
Yeah.
provide access.
That's where we started with, was we need to make sure that there's enough off-road parking. For the, we were trying to say off-road parking needs to be available, the sewer, the septic or sewer needs to be able to handle it. The bedrooms need to be able to handle it, that was, you know, where we started with this process,
Well, if
so.
we're limiting the number of people to 12 and above 12, it has to go to the planning board. Let the planning board decide if there's adequate parking. If there's adequate parking because the driveway is 1,200 feet long,
To go from
Okay.
12 to some other number.
just whatever, you know. And if the parking isn't adequate for more than 2 cars, then, or 3, whatever the number going into 12 is,
Simple.
then.
Yeah.
You can't do it.
So what I'm hearing is 2 per car, 3 per car, one parking spot per bedroom. So where are we?
Let the planning board decide. No, I mean,
I-
seriously,
I'm for,
I think for a life safety issue and, you know, I hear your comment about the fire trucks, but there's more than just fire trucks. I mean, I've had ambulances come to my house on a couple of different occasions, you know, and they gotta be able to access it. And I think in order to be safe for people living there as well as the emergency responders, I think you gotta have adequate parking to function as a short-term rental. And to me, that is a minimum of 1 parking spot per rentable unit, which would be a bedroom.
the thing is though, Jen, if you got a 50-foot long driveway, let's say,
Mhm,
and you can accommodate 3 cars in that driveway.
mhm,
If it's 8-foot driveway, which most driveways are,
mhm.
those 3 cars are gonna be in the way of that ambulance getting in. Unless the ambulance drives around or people move the cars out of the way, so,
So
I
that,
mean, providing that access is gonna be difficult. To me, no matter what we do.
well, then I'd have to ask as a follow-up to
You know,
zoning, code
How
enforcement,
do you?
is a driveway a parking spot?
Yes,
So a person could park on the driveway.
yes, and I can tell you, let me put my old fire captain hat on. I've been to probably over 150 house fires, never once have I been able to pull into a driveway, I've probably been to over 1,500 EMS calls, cardiac arrest. Never once have I been able to pull into a driveway. Now, fire code, and the reason why I said fire, yes, it is a big issue with EMS, but fire code dictates distance for access. Because that's more important. It's standard fire truck carries over 250 feet of hose to get from the road to the house. No fire truck's ever gonna pull into a driveway. EMS, yeah, happens all the time. That's just there. So fire code takes care of the access for those larger, longer driveways. Anything else in the middle, that's just parking. It's not really access to the house. So, I mean, to be specific, fire code says that if you're, I think it's 350 feet from a fire access road, you need a driveway. So you don't even need a driveway if you're 350 feet or 349 feet from the side of that road.
Hmm.
So that's where it comes in. I'll give you that side.
So it's really fire, not other emergency services.
Yeah, that's just, it's the way the fire code's written. I mean, I hate to be that guy, especially since I rode an ambulance. No one cares about EMS until you call 911. So
They need a,
it's the way it is. But yeah,
so Sarah, the revision is written for 3 per
1
car,
per 3.
3 per
1
car.
parking space per
One
3.
parking space for
occupants.
3 occupants.
Do we have an
Occupants.
appetite to change that?
I do.
There's 1,
I do.
2. Okay, so it's gonna remain there for debate on the,
No, it's a tough one to really rationalize that. I suppose you'd set it at that and see what happens.
or for the public hearing, we'll hear from other folks who can hear about what it
Let's
is.
do that then, let's just leave it at,
Right.
you know.
So did everyone get a chance to look at the highlights that, I'm sorry, yeah, Miriam had a comment that, septic versus sewer would also regulate, which is also true.
She's got her hand up. I don't know if she
Oh.
wants to speak.
Did you want to?
Dave, the other thing we have not addressed is how we're gonna determine the maximum occupancy of a bedroom.
That's the.
Right now, it's per the uniform code, and I heard Adeline conversing earlier that she advocated for changing it to 2 per bedroom. So I just want to make sure we're concluded on that before we move on, that's all.
I'm for the uniform code, which is set by New York State.
No.
Any appetite to change that?
It's just me, so.
No.
Miriam, you have your hand up? Would you like to say something? You're muted on your end, it looks like, or on our end.
On mute. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. A lot of these rentals are on the lake because that's why people are coming here. A lot of the lake area is on septic. And you've been discussing how many occupants, how many, bedrooms, parking and all of that, but nobody's taken into account that any of these rental properties that are on septic should be limited by the septic size, the permitted occupancy for the septic size, or I don't know, the code needs to say if rental property is on septic, in no circumstance will the occupancy exceed the number of occupants determined by the septic size. Something to that effect.
So there's a section D that says proof of septic system capacity and a copy of the most recent inspection in accordance with the town code at back.
So we've looked at,
Yes, so they have to prove their septic capacity, but there's nowhere that you're saying that it's limiting the number of occupants.
So we do underneath the next section, 201-6, subsection M. STRs must have sufficient septic or sewer capacity to support the maximum occupancy as defined by the zoning inspector.
so we throw that back into our hands to limit that.
I don't think that the connection is going to be made that significantly. Somewhere on the rental form then, or on the application for rental, to the town, the permit or whatever, it needs to say what is the septic size, and then what are the number of occupants, and tie those two together.
So we do that behind the scenes. Reason being is because underneath 201-5 title D, or subsection D, excuse me, that spoke of the proof of the septic system capacity and a copy of the most recent inspection in accordance with town code chapter 202. 202 is what we have to refer to for what the septic size has to be, which is based off of bedrooms. Furthermore, we require the most recent inspection because in the town's ordinance, you have to get an septic inspection anytime there is a change of ownership in the property. And if you are within 200 feet of the shoreline of Canandaigua Lake, you have to have one done every 5 years. And we require the most recent, not only so we have proof of proper septic and sufficient septic capacity, but also so that we maintain compliance with that chapter 202 of septic law.
Okay, so you've got the proof of what the septic size is and how many it will support. Is there some place where it limits the number of occupants you can have because of the septic size.
Yes, that's in that chapter 202. That's in that our town of Canada with septic law. That's all.
Where it will be easy for the people that are renting to understand how many people they can have there, and for a code enforcement officer to understand that they, even though they meet all of the other laws for parking and whatever, that because of the septic, they can't.
Before the permit were to be issued, they would have to overcome that septic issue.
Okay,
So I can tell you as a OTN inspector for septic systems, I wouldn't have known how to rate a septic system before that. I don't know of anyone that does, unless you work on septic systems. It's a very complicated process that DEC lays out for us, as well as just general industry officials. But I can tell you the code enforcement office, we're OTN certified, which is a national standard. We also rely heavily on Ontario County Soil and Water for their folks. They're all OTN certified. So our office is well versed in this and should not be an issue.
okay, but I was also hearing that, and I don't know where the property is, but someone was talking about a problematic property on Middle Cheshire Road that had extensive parking and had extensive number of bedrooms, and it's been a problem. What's the septic size there? Can that be a limiting factor on that property?
Yes, ma'am.
Every septic system is a limiting factor. Right?
Yeah.
Limiting factor on every property.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I just want to make sure it's being
Yeah.
caught.
We appreciate your
Because
concern, and I think we all share that concern. Septic is a much bigger issue than if a SDR is on sewer.
Mhm.
Okay,
I can tell you that if it's on septic, not only is Sarah's office and Kristen being very adamant about getting the most recent inspection records, design records, all of that, but we also maintain that. So that should there ever be an issue in the future, we have that as, I hate to say evidence, but that's really what it is evidence for a violation. So if you have 20 people on a property and your septic's only rated for 10, well, now we have a bigger issue that has higher
Right,
penalties.
and they wouldn't be able to get the permit for
Right.
20 people if the septic size cannot,
Accommodate.
doesn't have the capacity for that.
Is sewer ever limiting? Or it's
No.
not at all? Okay.
Technically, yes, but
The house was allowed to be built.
yeah,
Right.
then we can't really do anything.
Just wondering.
If you asked Ontario County,
They'd
they'd
say
probably
yes.
say yes, but.
How long did you wait?
Other
how
issues.
about properties that are currently renting that this law currently isn't in place? For instance, I know there's a bunch of properties up on, I think it's Fox Ridge. Just north of me on Westlake Road.
Red Fox.
Or that goes up.
I
Red
think
Fox
it's
is,
Fox Road. Yeah, not Fox Ridge.
okay. Where neighbors have complained about the parking all over the side of the road. But parking may not be the biggest issue. You could limit that if you look at the septics on those properties.
That we already, that's been standard in the law since it was originally done in 2020.
So they've already
So-
overcome that hurdle of septic to
Yeah.
have the people that are there. There's nothing we can do or this law will do to change that.
Other
They
than
have an
parking.
adequate sized septic system. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm just saying that that's the way it is.
Okay,
If they've been permitted.
If they've been permitted, if they're not permitted, different issue.
Yeah.
okay.
So any other issues about, I mean, I think Sarah did a marvelous job of encapsulating the changes. Thank you.
Summarizing.
I caught them all, but I tried.
You did a great job. It was very, very useful.
It's always fun to
There was
summarize
a-
the ordinance committee.
That email we got from the
From
county.
Linda Phillips.
From Linda, yeah.
Yeah. Just, I mean, one was under applicability, it said uniform building code and uniform, I think, let's say fire code after
Yeah,
that.
so-
That was-
I mean, I was gone last week, so I sent that email yesterday.
Yeah.
To everybody.
Mhm.
That is a good point. Like of the comments from Linda Phillips. you know, you guys,
Yeah, we saw them
you
all.
want us to change in
Well,
I-
that one is just a,
draft.
I liked her comment about having signage including maximum overnight and or daytime occupancy on the signage. I thought that was good. That would be more clear if we put that in the
A couple
same,
of comments might just be almost like that one is almost like a typo. Like we
Oh,
don't
that-
need to leave
yeah.
that out.
Right.
no, I mean the one, not the 201-6E, but the 201-6K. She said include maximum overnight occupancy and maximum daytime occupancy on signage, question mark, so.
Also, the doors and egress windows, a map of that, I think that's something that we would want.
I think that wouldn't be too hard to add that language to
Right.
the spot where we talk about
Right.
the requirements for the.
Right, I agree.
Do we still have a reference to sleeping areas? She's saying there's about.
Yeah, there was one that got missed.
No sleeping.
I mean, especially with parking lot of this.
Yeah.
Six.
It's wonderful, Sarah, that you've incorporated her into our formulating this. I think she brings a certain level of expertise.
take
That's different set of eyes on stuff. It's great.
may I ask him to put this in, but just, under, events. Where it talks about the number of guests, including overnight and daytime guests, does not exceed twice the amount. Would it be helpful to put an example in there, just like in parentheses, 12 max overnight, 12 daytime guests? I don't, you know, some people can read but not understand.
Well, I think
They
we
read.
should make that more clear like it is in here, because like John brought up last meeting. It was saying the double thing was all very confusing, and however they wrote it in here, finally, I think that was good, so I think.
Yeah,
It was
does
more
not
clear.
exceed
Yeah, it was
twice
more
the
clear. Latest
maximum occupancy, but you put an example there, 12 overnight,
Yeah,
12
Yeah, I
max
think-
daytime.
I think Terry makes a good point. If we just have an example of what it is, right?
well, you could just say, see this F2A, you could say total number of guests. Including overnight and daytime guests does not exceed 24, or whatever, if it's 12 or 24, and just
I
add the
would make
number in
it
there.
even more simple, say 12 max overnight, 12 daytime guests, just so that it's extremely clear, because
Well, that could,
people don't.
that's not clear to me, because that could be, you just mean 12 period, no, that there's only 12
What?
allowed all the time. So
No, it doesn't. Is that what I
I'm saying you
said?
could read it that way, so I think
Oh, you could maybe. but-
I'm saying, so
There
it
you
it
go.
should say, if you want, I'm all about clarity, so I could say 12 overnight guests allowed, no more than 24 people on the premises during the day.
Whatever, Adeline. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, no, I agree, it's a good one.
I'm sure.
So are we comfortable as a committee with the public hearing, with sending this law on out?
Yes.
Yeah, I have one question. Other than the issue with whether it's 12 or 16 occupants. If someone wants to appeal the regulations here, who do they appeal to?
Town board, I think.
Town board. Because the only time it goes to planning board would be this occupancy. Okay, as long as that's clear. So if somebody takes exception to Mike not issuing a permit, they appeal to the town board.
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, it wouldn't be to the planning board.
Okay, because the original draft, the one that's on the books now, had a lot more planning,
You're right.
but that was
Yeah.
when it was a zoning issue.
Yeah, but we
it's a
should
code
have
issue.
that spelled out in here.
Do we need to, though, because it's spelled out in town code?
I would, because it's spelled out in every other chapter in town code where that's the,
So put that line in there.
sorry. Just to help me, it's a good point because, so like, I'm just chapter 92, 88, all of those, if I make a decision. Even floodplain
The
control,
appeals are in your chapter specifically.
it's specifically, because sometimes it's also ZBA. So like floodplain, if you want to argue against my floodplain determinations, it goes to ZBA, not town board. Like,
Because it's in
Do
the
we need
zoning
to
thing.
spell out the appeals process?
Yep.
Okay, I'm good, dude.
Anyone else? Great. Please come to the public hearing. Feedback from our short-term rentals that are here.
Not that much at this time. I think for us, just maybe the discrepancy with the sleeping areas. I know that language is trying to get removed from the short-term rental application. So does that mean that someone can't sleep on a pull-out couch anymore in the living room. That's kind of where we're at with it. Because currently that is the language, which is how we based our business model, if you want to call it that, last year is based on someone being able to pull out the couch in the living room and sleep in the living room.
Mike, do you want to address that?
Yeah, so it's not so much that we're gonna pull it out and say that you can't. It's that we're being asked to permit a certain occupancy.
Okay.
So by trying to go off of sleeping area, which is
More
honestly
vague, more
the
vague.
worst
Yep.
term I've ever heard in
Mhm.
state code, because it's not a defined term. Allows us to truly get a true number,
You're trying
right?
to generalize it basically.
Exactly, so now we're being more specific, it's designed for that. Cause truth be told, we were getting a lot of people where it was. Well, this is a sleeping area, that's sleeping area, that's sleeping area, that's one, and it's like, it is, but I can't permit that. Because there's other items that go into it, more specifically, the town has a more. Not strict definition, because the state doesn't actually define what a bedroom is. Town code does,
Okay,
where it gets a little bit more strict. And what has to be in place, so that's where it's been pulled out. Purely for the fact that we're permitting it. This way we can get a more specific
Yeah.
count, more numbers, and all that.
I think the problem is sometimes is because you're adopting New York State's, you're saying that, but then you're not following it. And I totally understand where you're coming from on that, but that's a lot of confusion there because you're saying you're following it, but then you're not.
So we're following it in the sense of occupancy for bedrooms.
Correct.
Okay.
But it's not stated.
What is a
in the
bedroom?
current language, it has the whole definition for sleeping area, which is any area advertised for sleeping. That's a habitable space such as a living room or a den or a bonus room, whatever it may be, let's say that, so I think for current people like ourselves, so someone new coming in is gonna have whatever you have here that's new. That's more black and white and more defined, which is great. We're going off of what was out last year, which basically says, which does say that you kind of have sleeping areas on your town language, it says that. So I think it's, how does that affect current?
How do we address
owners?
the changes we've made with current permit holders?
That's
what
like I
you're
said
asking,
before,
right?
That want to follow the law, that want nothing more than to be in compliance with the town. We don't want any issues whatsoever, but mind you, we built everything around the ability to have someone sleep, have a couple people sleep on a pull-out couch in the living room in our property, because we have 2 bedrooms.
The way the new law is written, the occupancy is gonna be dictated by bedroom.
Only by
size.
bedrooms.
Now, if one of the people that you get in that occupancy
Sure.
wants to sleep on the couch.
Sure, I understand that. So, but our
the total
permit,
occupancy is gonna be
Right.
dictated according to
Right.
the way the new law is written,
Right.
based on the size of.
How
the
big your bedrooms are.
so basically that cuts our occupancy in half from what it was last year. So how
That's
does
how
that,
we're gonna have to.
I understand
enforce it.
that, yeah. So does that mean we aren't grandfathered into anything as some other municipalities have done with these changes?
Grandfathering is a good legal question and our attorney is not here. But I could certainly send that out to him.
Yeah,
ask
and
that.
again, we've talked about, we had 8, so we've talked about, we've never had 8 people stay there. We've listed it as 8 because that's what we had last year. We've never had 8 people stay. We usually have 4 people or 5.
Average.
On average, 4 to 5 people. Actually, a lot of 2 people stays, especially this time of year. But when you have a family and you have 2 parents and 3 kids, and again, we have 2 bedrooms, then we're limited to 4 people under the new.
No. Now, correct me if I'm wrong.
Not necessarily, depends how big your bedroom.
Depends on the size of the
Based on
sleeping
the
areas,
size of the
right,
bedroom.
right. So you might be able to get 3 people.
We can't.
Okay, so.
Now, above and beyond that though, did I hear this incorrectly that you can apply for a variance as well? On how many that you can allow?
That would be
Only if
dictated
it's
by the
over 12.
size of your sleeping area. We wouldn't grant a variance that would say, okay, this living room is now a sleeping area. Correct me if I'm wrong, it would come to you guys.
No, it comes to town boards.
So the way that would work, best case scenario,
It's not over 2. Okay.
if it's, say you have 100 square foot, state says you're allowed to. If you wanted to have 3, we can't grant a variance to that. That's something that would have to be granted by Department of State. Now Now, if it was saying that the parking, if you wanted relief from the parking, saying you're only allowed 3,
Mhm.
want to have 4, then you can seek relief from the town for that element. Stuff like that, you can seek relief from. If it's anything that the state sets out, then you can still seek relief, but you have to do that through the state, which is a different process.
Okay,
So,
so
Excuse me.
basically, like, we would have to then we would apply and then go to the state, or how would that work?
But when we had our other design with the 2 per bedroom, they could have applied for a variance,
Yes.
correct?
through us, as long as they met the state requirements.
Which is another reason why I think that was a better answer.
And the process for the state is doable, but it's tough. The biggest thing is, unlike a local ordinance or zoning where you have to prove that, there's no harm to other neighboring properties, you're limited to this. The state is looking at it from a safety aspect.
Mhm.
So they're gonna say, okay, you want 3 where you're allowed 2, or you want 4 where you're allowed 3. They're gonna say, what do we get in return? For instance, the last ones that were granted for this region fall back on ag barns.
Okay.
That the whole agritourism,
Mhm.
they wanna host weddings, they wanna have stuff like that. Well, anything over 50 persons requires sprinklers.
Gotcha,
So a lot of these were like, we want 100 people in our
Mhm.
barn, we don't want sprinklers.
right,
The give from the property owners was. They have the one that I was involved, in, they have exit doors every 25 feet, where
Oh.
normally they're 75 feet.
okay,
They have ventilation built in,
Yep.
so that should a fire break out, the ventilation opens up. That's what the state really
Mhm.
looks for,
okay.
so it can be done, I don't
Right,
know.
well, and the
Yeah.
state code right now says you can sleep in any habitable space
Mhm.
besides kitchens, so we're not doing anything outside of state code.
Mhm.
State code clearly says that you can sleep in other areas outside of
Right.
bedrooms, as long as they're habitable spaces, they're not closets or kitchens or utility rooms or,
That's what I was saying, that's where it gets,
so that's where a little bit of
Confusing,
the gray area.
because you're
Because
saying you're adopting the code, but
So-
you're not, because you're going up the
But we're not
bedrooms.
saying they can't sleep on that.
It's
full
not going on
couch. We're just
bedroom.
giving you a maximum number.
Right,
Based
but
on your sleeping area, so
ba-
that's.
based on our bedrooms, not our sleeping area.
Based on
Yeah,
the size of-
if their bedrooms are not big enough to
Our bedrooms
accommodate,
can only
So-
accommodate 2.
then
per
it doesn't
bedroom.
solve the issue.
The biggest things is.
Yeah, I know.
Are that the town actually defines what a bedroom is. State code,
Right.
nowhere in the code defines what a bedroom is. It defines it by restrictions, so the occupancy, egress, ventilation, glazing. The town states that a bedroom is a room with certain features characteristic of bedrooms. A room with a minimum of 70 square feet in size, a room which meets emergency egress requirements set forth in New York State Building Code. And the presence or absence of a closet shall not determine whether a room is deemed a bedroom. But in the absence of evidence that conclusively establishes that the room is not a bedroom, the room in question may be deemed a bedroom. And then it goes on to even more, which talks about
Mhm.
wastewater law. So that's where we have to permit bedrooms. We have to go off of that. The board, it's based off of all the stipulations, the requirements of the law
So
to go.
And that's.
what
not
would
an
you
issue
say to
for
them? Is there a
rental
closet in
homes.
your living room where they're sleeping? I mean, can they then call their living room a bedroom?
It doesn't
Closet's
say
not
that that's
determined.
required.
Yeah. I
Anymore.
know.
So for this one,
It would have to be,
I don't want to speak on specific cases.
Yeah.
And ordinance committee.
I don't know what the
I'll leave it at
language is, but a bedroom would have to have is this true? If the bedroom has to have a door or be
Yes,
private?
Separate.
So unfortunately, our living room would
That's
not meet that requirement. So, that's for someone who's currently operating, who went and got a permit like we were supposed to immediately, right upon doing this. And we did research the year before. We followed everything last year. We have the paperwork from last year that was published.
Approved.
And was approved last year for 8 people. How now we're gonna be down to 4, but not even 6. We can't even have 2 people sleep on a pull-out couch. I think it's harsh. It's harsh for someone who's trying to follow the rules and was following the rules that were in place prior. That's the only question that I have.
Let me ask our
Okay,
attorney about it.
Sure.
Would something be grandfathered and that'll just put
Yeah.
this all to rest, or it's gonna bring it back up?
or is
One
it a
area.
case by case basis? I understand that. Do we need to fill out some extra paperwork? Do we need, what do we need to do?
Right,
We're not looking to go to have excessive amounts of folks there, like
Right.
I told you, so.
right.
From my perspective, we have to enforce what rules are written.
Sure.
If you have, I can't remember what the attorney was suggesting, like, for people who already have a permit right now, it's
Right.
probably not gonna expire for a couple more years, but I think that was going to be left alone. And when that expires, you'd have to come back under the.
Is there a
law.
3-year?
And I hear what you're saying, and I
Yeah.
appreciate your
Yep.
frustration. You showed up today, but there's, 10 other people who have
Sure.
short-term rentals that didn't show up today that have a different issue.
Yep.
I don't believe, from my own personal
Mhm.
professional opinion, that we can write the law to help each and every.
No,
one
I
of you with
understand that
their
100%.
problems.
Yep.
And even though I sympathize with you.
Yep.
I'm kind of like, that's the way it is.
Yes, I understand that. I think as a business owner, I'm just giving you the perspective of.
Right, and.
You know, and also we very much support the local
Right,
economy. We're
and every
constantly,
case
yeah.
can bring their case for an
Sure.
exemption, so that, I mean, that's, I think,
So
where.
I think that was just my question. What's our
They
process?
can't, that's what they're saying, is that if we, now that it's not based on the per bedroom, and it's instead based on the uniform code. They can't bring that to us for an exemption.
They can bring to the state, though.
No, it's based on bedroom.
Yeah.
And there, again, I really don't want to speak on specifics.
Yeah.
But in a case similar to this, you in this law, the town board is authorizing us to only permit bedrooms. Not sleeping areas, because from a staff perspective, that was a nightmare.
Mhm, Yep,
Sleeping areas never meet egress requirements,
Oh, yeah.
glazing, ventilation, any of that. Yes, the state says you can sleep in them, but that's supposed to be on an infrequent basis. My wife gets mad at me, I'm snoring, she kicks me out.
mhm,
That's where that comes in. For the town to permit someone to sleep in there, it
Yeah.
has to have certain, especially with our bedroom definition. So that's where that all comes in. They're not, it wouldn't be seeking relief from state code, town code. It's just, that's the way that this has been written. That's what we permit. So,
Well, right.
Correct.
So then for our permit was up in January. So we applied in January. So we've
You
been
have 3 more
going,
years.
well, we've been going round and around about this because this isn't adopted yet.
No.
So these
Do you
new
have a
laws shouldn't
current
apply to us. We did, yes, that just,
right now, have a valid permit.
we asked to renew it in January. We
But-
applied to renew it in January. But then they are trying to apply the new rules to
so.
our old
to it.
permit.
The reason for that is because New York State says that every dwelling unit with other ones shall be arranged as to provide privacy from other spaces. Our AHJ, authority having jurisdictions, interpretation of that is that your dwelling unit needs to be able to provide privacy. By not having a door or a means to provide privacy, that is what is called a combination living room, dining room area, which is a defined term in the uniform code. No longer is considered a sleeping area, because if I had to consider that to be a sleeping area, I have to take that square footage out of your living space, which would make your home unoccupiable.
That's not the language
So
I
now-
got
so
from the
hold on,
state.
can I
I'm
ask-
trying to
so-
get into it with everyone.
Can I ask you a
here.
quick
That's
question
a
on that?
separate
Yep.
thing.
If that's the case, how did the permit get issued last year?
I can't speak to previous code.
Okay.
I can speak to,
So
Sure.
basically,
Correct.
we applied under the same,
Interpretations.
under no changes in the law. We reapplied for a renewal of our permit and our permit was not renewed. Well, it is renewed, I think, but I don't know what it's for. I have no idea what the occupancy is for. And I think that's why, so where do we go next? Cause there's changes happening, but they shouldn't apply to us just yet. We can't make these changes happen immediately. If we have to go down to 4 people,
Right.
then
Oh, no,
that's what it is.
I
But-
understand your frustration.
Yeah.
And I understand your concern, but for this committee,
Yeah,
we're
Sure.
trying to push on, so I think you need to
Yep,
talk
so
to
what, who do we
Sarah
talk
or
to?
Mike, yeah. And they can give you direction from that,
Okay.
so.
Poor Kristen.
So we're comfortable moving this law on then to the open, to the public hearing. On the agenda, which we won't go after today, was workforce housing and incentive zoning. Workforce housing came up because of Bob DiCarlo and some ag stuff. Mike really addressed it quite well. Sarah followed up on it. So it's a sprinkler versus a non-sprinkler thing. I talked to Nadler about it. I actually also talked to George Mueller, who's one of the biggest farmers on the planet. They have 90 employees. They're building the same thing. They're gonna have to put a sprinkler in. So I think we're not gonna move very far from that, as much as we all want. to help out Bob and the notes where we have to do what we have to do, so.
So state code in any workforce housing requires a sprinkler system, is that what it is?
State code does not define workforce housing.
Right.
So the problem is, and again, I really gotta urge the committee not to talk about specifics, cause.
Right.
Then I get put on the record.
Right,
We're not
right,
gonna
right,
go
right.
down that road.
We're not talking about this.
So, but the state does not define what a single family dwelling is, just like it does not define all this other stuff.
Okay.
The issue is that workforce, farm labor housing, workforce housing is by definition a boarding house.
Okay,
The only structures for group R, which is residential, that do not require sprinklers are single family, two family, townhome, and rooming houses, which meet the definition of townhome, this and this and this and this.
okay. So it's an exception to those and therefore it requires sprinklers.
Yeah.
Right, correct.
Yep.
And it's again, it falls back to being a safety issue, so. I
And
mean,
that's with any time that you're building something that's built for more than one family or, okay. So even like
instance-
like a duplex would be built, would have to have.
It's your family.
So Piercebrook,
Yeah,
those are townhomes.
Yeah.
Townhomes are, if the middle one burns,
they
theoretically,
all do, yeah.
well, no, theoretically, the other ones are not.
Walls, right.
Yep,
Okay.
firewall, so they're built with firewalls. Anything
Uh,
that's not a townhome or a single family or a duplex requires sprinklers.
So if someone
Well,
carves
single
their home into 4 units, you know, they would have to have
Well,
sprinklers.
no,
It's complicated.
because then we're in existing building code.
Okay, because it's existing.
Pre-existing non-conforming.
No, but yes, no.
Okay, I got it. So, but if
Yeah.
they're building it that in that.
If you're building it to new, you either have to build it to the residential code. Or the building code. The residential code is the only one that does not require sprinklers, and that is single family, two family, and townhomes, and then the fourth one, which is.
And that comes through New York, that's not something we can.
Nope, if you wanna, if someone would like relief from that, they can go through the state. And they can go, have
they-
me send them all the information again.
Some part of this ag housing thing is in front of, you know, the state legislature, and I actually talked to Pam Helming about it, and I mean, they are looking at trying to make some exceptions for that. Doesn't apply to us right now. The law is the law right now, so we can't back away from that for currently, so. All right, next meeting, May 6th, 9 AM. Thank you all for your participation. Looking forward to our public hearing.
Really?
I'm sure no one will have any.
Just a
comment
motion to
at any
adjourn.
time.
So moved. Second,
I think they just looked at it.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all for coming.